So we'll start then. Hello and welcome to today's CPD session. This presentation is going to provide a guide and reference point as we progress through the content of this afternoon's webinar, and it can be found in the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel if you'd like to review it. We do encourage questions, so please do use the question box to share any questions that you have. This session is a mixture of providing information, exploring best practice, asking questions and sharing ideas. It is therefore vital that everyone participates, sharing their ideas in a collaborative way and to allow for peer learning to take place as well. If you haven't already done so, please let us know that you can hear us okay by using the question box which you'll find in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So I'm Helen Scanlon and I'm part of the provider development team. My background is varied. I've got vocational teaching experience. I'm a literacy and numeracy specialist, and I have teaching and learning and assessing experience from a range of settings, including schools, colleges and private training organisations, teaching courses and qualifications from pre-entry to master's level. I've got a master's degree in education and professional development. I've worked for a number of years in a quality improvement role. I've been a curriculum leader and lecturer in teacher training and have experience of being part of formal Ofsted inspections. I've been working with our education childcare levels since May 2020, and I'm going to share learning from this throughout today's webinar. So you can see on the screen now the objectives for today's session. It will last 1 hour in total. It's being recorded and that will allow you to review it afterwards, and of course all of the relevant colleagues to access it. We're also joined today by Janet King, the Sector Manager for Education and Childcare. Hello Janet, and as always, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, hello everyone. Hello Helen and Rachel. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it, as always, Helen.
Thanks a lot. I know we're quite excited about this one because we've made quite a few changes since the last time we did this in 2020. So it is a new session today. So anybody who is a Wave 1 provider who's with us, welcome, hello. We love having you here. You will find that it's a different session today than we did on formative assessment, probably around this time last year. And as Janice just said there, Rachel's here with us today. Hello, Rachel.
Hello.
So Rachel's my colleague in the provider development team looking after the digital T levels, and she's here to help with the question box and the admin side of things. So thanks, Rachel. If we have any digital questions, we'll come to you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to get started by asking everybody the first poll question. How important are formative assessment activities in T levels? These are the choices you're going to have. Are they more important to the teachers, tutors and assessors? Are they more important to the students? Are they more important to the industry placement staff? Or are they all of equal importance? So you should see the poll on your screen now. If you could let us know which one of those you feel to you is the most important when it comes to formative assessment methods. So thank you to those who have voted already. We'll leave it up in a while just to give everyone the chance to vote. So we're nearly there. We're at 83% now, and just have to get some maths in wherever possible. So we've got about 17% there. Oh, 92% now. So thank you, everybody. I'll just leave it open just a tiny bit longer. And I think possibly we could have put a number 5 answer choice as being, well, it depends. But we will come to that later. We will talk about that as the session progresses. I'll just give it a few more seconds just to give everybody the opportunity to vote if you haven't already done so. Okay, I'm going to close that now. I'm going to share the results. And as you'll see, everybody said it's all of equal importance, which it wasn't a trick question at all, because I think it does depend. But I think you're also correct in saying that they are probably all of equal importance. So thanks for that. That's our starting point. Brilliant. So we all have an awareness that formative assessment is very important to track progress on any course. for the teachers, for the tutors, for the students, and of course placement staff where relevant. And T levels are no different. Other than historically, vocational courses typically use assignments and project work as their summative assessment strategy, and these could be therefore used as formative assessment tasks as well. We'll therefore need to use a range of formative assessment methods and activities to assess students' ongoing progress on the T levels to allow us to adapt our teaching and learning activities and interventions appropriately. So the focus of this session is not to explore why we should carry out formative assessment strategies and activities, but to explore and evaluate the methods that we do use and how they could be adapted and best used for T levels. Janet, is there anything sector specific you'd like to add here, please?
I think formative assessment has just become so significant and so critical, with the T levels in terms of the fact that it's moved from that modular to a linear in its assessment approach, and it just raises the profile of formative assessment. So I just think having a focus like this today, Helen, will be really useful in terms of just networking, sharing all that brilliant practice that's going on, and just raising the profile of formative assessment for real outcomes for students.
Lovely, thank you, Janet. I'm just going to quickly pause as well because thank you, people. There's questions coming in already. So can I ask Rachel to tell us what we're being asked so far, please?
Oh, hi. It was just Vanessa voting on the poll, so she said 4 as well.
Brilliant, okie dokie. Thanks a lot, Vanessa. That's wonderful. Okay, we're going to start off by asking you a question for your definition of formative assessment. So just very quickly, if you could pop something into the question box for Rachel, for us, to say what is your definition of formative assessment. So just a one sentence explanation of what formative assessment is, just so that we can get all into the same starting point. So we'll give you a minute just to pop something into the question box related to your definition of formative assessment, please. So you might want to make this relevant to the subject area. You might want to make it relevant specifically to T levels, or you might want to leave it generic. So just whichever's best or easiest for you. How would you define what formative assessment is in the T level, in education childcare, or just in general, please? Okay, yeah, thank you. I can see people are starting to put their ideas in. So Rachel, can I ask you to share them for me, please?
Yes, we've got formative assessment allows teachers to know what a student understands from the learning that's being delivered.
Excellent, brilliant, thank you.
And ongoing monitoring of learning.
Absolutely. Anything else?
It's undergoing monitoring of learning through a range of methods to meet individual needs.
Brilliant. I can see
Assessment.
loads are coming in now. So yeah,
Yes.
just go through it. Just run through them, please.
Assessment of understanding to support and inform teaching and learning. An activity that is used to assess that learning has taken place. And this can be a format recorded activity or through verbal and questioning.
Brilliant.
To monitor
And
students'
maybe
learning.
one more or so we can get on.
Ongoing monitoring and providing ongoing feedback.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody, for that. And thanks, Rachel. thanks to those who shared the definitions. I think everybody did there. That's brilliant. It's really useful for everyone to hear each other's ideas. I'm going to recap and run through some definitions. This first example you can see highlights the need for assessment to take place as the learning is happening. This reinforces the need for the activity to be ongoing and explains how it differs from summative assessment. The second example brings in the range of variety of methods, which was brought up by you guys, thank you. And I think that's really important. If we over-rely on the same assessment method, this could demotivate our students and disadvantage some, depending on their preferred learning styles and support needs. And then this final example brings in the need for their assessment activities to be contextualised, which is also important, and also used to assess our students' characteristics, which I think is an interesting point and does imply a more holistic approach to formative assessment. I also think that the reference to it taking place at several times during a course refers to more formative assessment activities. I would suggest that formative assessment activities take place extremely regularly in every contact we have with the students in a more informal context. We use ongoing assessment activities to constantly check for understanding and rates of progress. And this also includes the depth of learning for individuals and of course informs our future teaching, learning and assessment practices. Okay, we'll now share the learning about formative assessment from the first year of T Level delivery. The images on the screen now are representative of assessment and target setting. The important factor to consider for T levels is that the qualification and assessments are designed to produce work-ready, skilled students, because it's not only knowledge-based, and this is the difference between T levels and A levels. Formative assessment shouldn't focus only on progress towards passing the exams and getting ready for the employer set project. It should also assess development of the application of that knowledge in the industry. If there's a delay in a starting placement, then best practice would be for teachers to bring real life examples into classroom and independent study activities to enable that work-ready student. The second factor relates to retention of knowledge, not only for the exams in the following summer or autumn, but also applying them and reviewing them on an ongoing basis. We need to remember the importance of development of the wider skills, knowledge, competencies and confidences, the other and very important abilities needed in the industry, whilst also remembering to assess the individual breadth and depth of learning required for employment and of course success. Which brings us to which method to use. And in year one of delivery, the centres who used a wide range of methods saw higher levels of engagement and motivation from their students. And then finally, who to involve in formative assessment activities. Best practice would be to include anybody that's relevant. So those placement staff, any support staff, learning mentors, but most importantly, the students themselves. Have the assessment done with them rather than done to them. Okay, I'm going to continue with a recap of the learning journey, and I'm going to use this image of a mountain again to represent the learning journey T-level students will make. If we assume that they're starting at the base of the mountain at point A, their final destination at the top of the mountain at point C would be the successful completion of their T-level programme. So this yellow arrow shows how they get there. Or does it? Not for all. They might start off really well, and the excitement and positivity of a new course and programme normally gives students quite a strong start, but something might happen and they'll go off track. So we put in some interventions and support and they get back on track until something happens again, or the course content they find too challenging or too new and they go off track again. And this time there's a bit of a crisis in the learning. They really find the subject or topic that they're being taught, anything at all, challenging. They really struggle to focus. The assessment activities show that they're not progressing. So further interventions, support and activities are put in place which allows them to refocus and they start to get it. They're progressing again, doing well. And near the end of the programme, there's a focus push and everything falls into place. So your formative assessment activities will capture this journey for every student. They will track how the students progress in their learning, including their industry placement, which interventions, support, additional learning activities and staff are involved, as well as the reviewing of their progress against their individual goals and targets. Each organisation has their own tracking system with the results of initial and diagnostic assessment, existing qualifications, the ILPs, the targets and learning goals. So how you do this in your organisation is entirely up to you. What's important is that ongoing progress and development is tracked, each student's journey is documented, and they know exactly what they need to do to progress and excel in each aspect of their programme. So the next question I'd like to ask is, what is your favourite formative assessment method? You may also consider your students' preferred favourite method. I don't need you to tell us your answers, just consider your current practice and start to review it, please. Do you rely on a tried and tested method, or do you try out new approaches depending on the needs of your students? Do you focus on summative assessment prep, or do you assess more holistically, thinking about the skills, knowledge and wider competencies needed for employment? Please also start to review the impact of your current formative assessment methods. How effective are they? Do they contribute to the learning experience? Do they tell you and your students what you need to know? Okay, so on the screen now you can see a range of methods. Which of these do you use? Do you use a wide range of activities? Do your students ever get assessment fatigue? Thinking more broadly, could you develop your practice to make things easier for you or better for your students? I know I have favourite methods as a teacher, but I need to be mindful that all students are different and respond differently. So making things fun, diversifying the approaches and reviewing the impact and success of my assessment approach is really important. Just going to pause a second to see if we've got any further questions coming in as we're going here, Rachel.
No, we're okay for questions.
Okay, lovely, thanks. I'll keep going then. So we're now going to move on to feedback versus feed forward. We're going to briefly explore the difference between feedback and feed forward, and these could be described as being linked to assessment of and assessment for learning. And it's useful to consider the difference when you're choosing, developing and using formative assessment activities. So feedback relates to what's being achieved at a specific point or via a particular assessment activity. Confirmation for the student and the teacher of the knowledge, skills, competencies which have been demonstrated. Feed forward focuses on the next step, specifically what the student needs to do to develop and progress, what they need to know to help them to continue to improve and develop their skills, knowledge and understanding moving forward. Both types of information, advice and guidance from tutors should be used to plan future learning activities. And all of this needs to be tracked and recorded, and of course fully understood and engaged with by the students. So let's now explore what educationalists say about formative assessments using the work of Jeff Petty and Dylan William. If you're looking to develop or improve your assessment practice, they suggest that trying out new approaches is the only way you'll improve it. Petty makes reference to best practice. And if you haven't already listened to Dylan Williams' ideas and experience, he makes some really interesting points related to how formative assessment practices can have a positive impact on the learning experience, the learner's engagement, the progress, and the levels of motivation. So we're going to summarise some of the ideas that we found from Petty and William. So firstly, traffic lights, and these could be on a card, images, or even coloured cups that the students use. In this example, in Dylan Williams' example, each student is given 3 cardboard pictures, cups, pictures, pieces of paper, whatever, coloured red, amber and green. As the lesson progresses, each student shows the level of their understanding by displaying the appropriate colour picture card cup on the desk in front of them. Red means I don't understand what's going on here. Amber means I sort of get it, but I'm not that confident. And green, I understand it well and I could even explain it to others. The teacher can then use this to inform further classroom activities. For example, to say to a student displaying an amber cup, what don't you understand? And then ask a student displaying a green cup to answer that student's query or question. Or say, red people, please come to me on this desk. With amber cards or cups, find a student with a green and work with them for this next task. Many different ways you can use the red, amber, green traffic light system. So C3 before me is what this next acronym means. While students are working in class, they are asked to consult 3 peers or some 3 other people before asking the teacher for help. This helps to build learner autonomy, consolidates the understanding of all students involved, and removes the reliance on the teacher all the time, creating a more collaborative learning environment too. And then you've got peer assessment, because these improve answers without a model or criteria. So students would work individually on a practice exam, test or quiz. Students would then work in groups of 3 or 4 to share their unmarked papers and answers. Students try to create the best composite answer from their individual papers, and then the groups would share their answers with the rest of the class. Dylan Williams' book, Embedding Formative Assessment, highlights best practices including peer explaining and helping, using student-led groups, as these lead to mastery learning where the students set their own targets. He also suggests that teachers should activate students as owners of their own learning and as instructional resources for each other, whilst providing feedback that moves learning forward. Teachers should maintain a belief in and focus on improvement, not only measurement of performance. He also advocates students designing assessment criteria and test questions, something I know I've spoken to centres about on a regular basis in consultations and support calls. Janet, is there anything sector subject specific you'd like to add here for us? Janet, are you there? We can't hear you. Right, it looks like Janet's offline at the moment, so we'll bring her in a moment. Okay, we're now going to ask you to complete a quick quiz. You've got the choice of the QR code that's on the screen at the moment, or I've popped the link that you can also see on the screen now into the chat. So this is a link to a Microsoft form quiz that I will share with you, but please either scan the QR code with a mobile phone or a tablet to take you straight to the form, or use the link that I've popped into the chat to have a go at the questions, please. We'll give you a couple of minutes. As I say, we'll give you a few minutes to use the link or the QR code. There's only about, I think it's about half a dozen questions on the quiz. Sorry, there's 8, I'm lying. But if most of them are multiple choice, you should be able to either answer them on your phone or via the computer, and we will run through the answers. I'm just going to bring over the quiz that we've got going here. So you'll see the questions relate to formative assessment. What is the main benefit of? Please choose the one that's most relevant. What type of advice and guidance from teachers can help students to plan their learning priorities? How frequently should teachers report, record, track student progress? I've got a true or false one. Teachers should fully involve T-level students in assessment of their progress. And then we've got some subject-specific questions. The first one related to element 6, and that's working with others. And that's not a right or wrong answer. This is your opinion. And same for 7. How can industry placement experience support formative assessment? Which of the following might be useful topics to explore for the student appreciation of the wider governance in place for education and childcare? And then the most important aspects of successful formative assessment is or are, and you can tick as many of those as you want. So I've come back to my view now, so this tells me who has completed it. And Janet and I have already had a try of it, which you can see there's already some responses there. So we're just going to leave this open for a couple of minutes to allow you to answer those questions. Janet, can I bring you in? I think we lost you in the last slide. Just is there anything about formative assessment that you'd like to add at all at the moment while people are doing the quiz?
Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Yeah, I lost audio. I've lost it a couple of times now. So I'll get on with what I want to say in case I lose it again. So formative assessment, I think, reassures the teacher. It absolutely does. And you referred to that, feedback, the checkpoints. What have I taught? How is it being received? But I think we sometimes sort of maybe not forget, but we sometimes don't appreciate just how much that formative assessment means to the learner, to the student as well, because it gives that reassurance, I think, to them. This is what I can do. This is what I've learned. This is now building upon that confidence and enabling that learning, that sort of moving forward and feeding forward for everyone, really, where real change and real learning takes place. So I think formative assessment, students might not always realise and appreciate it, but it actually is their own check and challenge and their own confidence building. Yeah, I did well today. I understood it, and I'm, that sort of healthier disposition, if you like, to learn and to be more curious moving forward. Hopefully you got that.
We did. Thank you so much for that. We will have a quick chat, Janet and I, now about the question answers here. I know not everybody has clicked, submit their answers yet, but for the first one, I mean, most of them are benefits. In fact, they're all benefits. However, we've set the correct answer as being it depends on how it's done and how the results are used, because none of the others work, do they, Janet? If the assessment method's not done correctly and the results aren't used appropriately.
Exactly. I think that idea of what do you do with that information, is it just for if I'm tutoring, is it just for me? Is it to be able to say, yes, I've done that, and I've taught that to this group of students, or is it about how you use that to be able to move the learning forward? And I know everybody on this call is sharing that opinion, that it's how you use this information that makes the biggest difference.
Lovely, thank you, agreed. And then the type of guidance or advice that to help students plan their learning priorities, obviously, is feed forward. And there has been some research done on grades and how grading benefits, motivates or not students, how much notice they take of the feedback and feed forward if there's a grade given, because it's generally they don't pay a lot of attention to the feedback and the detail in the feed forward if they've just got a grade. I got a grade B for that, so that's okay. I don't need to know anymore. It would have passed. I'm happy with that. So sometimes there has been some research done where they've taken the grades out and it's made a massive positive impact on how the students progressed.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. You can tell my teacher ed days was spent doing a lot of research. So how frequently should students and teachers record and track their progress? And there's no right or wrong answer there. I did like when there's an R in the month would be my preferred answer. But Janet, what do you think of those answers?
I think, yeah, when it's useful, when it's relevant, and It's always tends to be useful and relevant. So it's about the kind of method that you use, really. So whether it's a discussion, whether it's a Q&A, whether it's some sort of reflective task or some kind of practical task, whatever it is that those students are engaged in, you're actually creating useful and relevant feedback, enabling feed forward. So I think it's typically always relevant.
Lovely, thank you. So obviously teachers should fully involve the students in assessment of their progress. It never depends on the time of year. It's from day one and even before day one. And I'm going to hand over to you, Janet, for this one, because this was a very subject specific question.
Yeah, okay. So working with others and how important are the following professionals? I think if you were using something like this with your students, then you could think about that. But if you were thinking about that now as a teacher and the sort of engagement that you would have, there's probably some that you might engage with more than others. You might be thinking of Ed Sykes, for example, if a student is presenting with dyslexia and things like that. So you'd be definitely wanting to know about the learning needs and the individual needs that support that motivation and enable that that student to learn. So we're talking about inclusion when we think of all of these things, of course, and everybody's life, will be touched in different ways. And so if there are students, and you know this, if there are students within your cohort that are actually, being that there's some kind of intervention in any way, shape, or form, education, health, holistic health, and so on, then it's important to be aware of that and to make sure that the learning is going to be supportive and it's going to be meaningful and it's going to be consistent and it's going to enable that that student to contribute, to participate, and to learn and to progress.
Absolutely. And if you were asking your students these questions, they would probably all come up with very different answers depending on their experience and attitude. So it would be a good discussion or conversation starter, that kind of question, couldn't it? And then I'm going to
Absolutely. Sorry,
hand
Helen.
back to you again for this one. Yeah, sorry, that's okay, Jan. I'm going to hand you back. So I know you brought in the industry placement situation. Are you still with us? Okay, I can't hear you, Janet, so I'm going to keep talking through this one. There's lots of examples here of what an industry placement could do to support the formative assessment, and then we brought that in the poll question, didn't we, about how industry staff can help. So there's a few different ideas here in the way that they could help you with your formative assessment. And then this one's quite a topical one in relation to the wider governance in place, and which of these do you think might be useful topics for you to carry out and cover with your students? So that's where those came in. And then the most important aspects or points in relation to formative assessment are here, and these are all dependent on individual students, the subject, the project, the progress being made, etc., etc. So, Janet, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, first of all, apologies because my audio keeps dropping out and I have to keep leaving the webinar and coming back. So many apologies for that. I think what we've been looking at so far in terms of the different questions and how it can be explored, do you know what it helps us to do, this sort of thing? It helps us, you've got the word reflection on there, and it just helps us to reflect, doesn't it? It helps us to think about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how can we change it, and maybe using lots of different approaches to motivate and also to inspire tutors as well. You know, it's good to do something a little bit different sometimes.
Absolutely. So I've just refreshed it so that we could see how many responses we've had. So thank you to those who've completed it. You can get your individual responses, but as a teacher, what's really handy for me is I can save it to Excel and use it. It's therefore pre-marked, so you can set questions up on here that will be pre-marked for you, or they'll be marked for you before you get to them. So I do like working on the basis that assessment methods should be good, varied, useful, but also not onerous tasks for the teachers, setting them up and therefore marking them. So Microsoft Forms is a great way to get these results on an individual basis or on a group basis, as you can see now. So excellent. Thank you to those who participated there. Well, we'll keep going now. Thank you for that. And just a reminder as well that you've got the question box to answer, to pop in any questions. So we're going to base our ideas that we're going to share now on the following principles, and that's having a range of assessment methods, not creating large amounts of extra work for the teachers and assessors, tutors, involving the students as much as possible, them being part of the assessment activities rather than having them done to them, application of knowledge and skills to industry examples and practice, and digging as deep as possible into the core knowledge and how it should be applied in industry, but also sharing student knowledge and experience, developing their autonomy and analysis by promoting peer learning and peer assessment. So let's start with this image. What does it say to you? What assumptions do you make about this child in the picture? How would your students respond to the same question? So what does it say to you? And what would your students make of the picture? If we were going to use the image as the basis of a case study, what would be included in the case study? Let's have a look at this starter information. Janet, I'm going to hand over to you now to build on that and go through the next few slides.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Let's hope the audio stays with me. Okay, so this picture here, and I love this. I love the idea of using images, because what that does is straight away images, sounds, music's another good one. It evokes feeling. And I think when students can actually start to feel something, then that helps them to learn. So when we're looking at this picture, it opens up so many things that you can relate to the various elements within the core and indeed within the performance outcomes of the occupational specialisms. So we might be thinking of inclusion, we might be thinking of participation, we might be thinking of physical well-being, we might be thinking of emotional well-being. There's so much we can get from this. And then it will also enable discussions around stereotypes. It will involve discussions around how we ensure that children who present with SEND are included and can participate. So there's so much that can be gained from this picture, and it's a super little picture.
Lovely, thank you. And when I thought about what this picture says to me, I came up with these sentences for the case study. So it'd be really useful to put that picture up and see, write 2 or 3 sentences about that child and see what all the students come up with, see where they go.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you had,
But,
born in Iran. For you're thinking about is we've got English as an additional language. What about the family needs? There's so much that can come from that case study and the question alone. Sorry,
exactly.
Helen.
So that's absolutely fine. So we've also created some questions there, considering the different assessment outcomes. So based on that exactly same picture, we've just created some questions. And what are your thoughts on these questions, Janet?
Okay, so if we're looking at these questions now, we're thinking about it's that kind of checkpoint. Helen used that word checkpoint as that sort of feedback. We're thinking about, right, okay, what now? The picture has evoked some feeling, it's evoked some discussion points, it's allowed students to really explore things for themselves. So and they'll have those discussions within the peer group and within a larger group. And then they're able to think about the things that they've discussed now in the context of the specification and the syllabus that they're studying. So let's think about legislation. Let's think about the needs of Sophia in this particular context. What are the factors that we know about this young girl? How might that affect her education? Do we know how old she is? Yes, we do. can we make something from that case study around her educational needs and developmental needs? And what about that wider sort of scope? Let's think about her individual circumstances and how that might impact on her education, on her development. Who does she need to support her perhaps? And how can we differentiate within that typical sort of classroom environment? And then you begin to problem solve that. So right from a sort of scenario and case study that can lead in many directions through discussion, you're then able to pull back and you're able to draw these questions that that are on the screen, or typical questions that you might get from that, that prepare you for a more focused discussion that helps you to actually feedback and feed forward.
Absolutely, and the students could actually write these questions as well, couldn't they? You could assess their knowledge and depth and breadth of any of the elements by asking them to write some questions related to that image and related to a specific element. So there's
Yeah,
all sorts you can
absolutely.
do. So moving on then, we've got some very powerful pictures and they're going to be numbered. And what we'd like you to do while we talk through them is to consider one of the pictures and setting some questions that you would find useful using the image, as we've just been talking about, the image of Sophia and the questions that were raised there. Pick a picture and come up with some questions that you might ask using that picture. And I'm going to ask Janet to talk through them, please.
Lovely. Well, I just love pictures. I think if I was choosing some of those different methods that you were talking about earlier, Helen, and if I was thinking about it from a totally biased point of view, then for me, discussion, scenario, case studies, things that bring things alive and that allow all students a starting point, is absolutely fantastic. So look at picture one. I mean, look at that. Bless. So, you know, what's the boy doing? Is he excited? Is he reading? Is he thinking about a story? Is he with somebody where he's got a really good, powerful relationship? Is he with his peers? Is he going to be, is he joking? Is he laughing? There's so much that can come from that. So you can explore relationships. You can explore literacy. You could explore boys and literacy. So many things that can come from it. And that you can then focus in. So if you've got something that you think, right, formative assessment, it's going to be around, you know, a particular area, then you can find a picture that will allow for that discussion. All students will have an opinion and a starting point, and then you can bring them in with some more focused questions that you've thought about yourselves. Question two, so much, question two, picture two, so much in that, isn't it? You're going to get a lot from students when they look at that picture, and the girl who's deep in thought there. You see, I'm making an opinion. If I was being objective, then the girl is sort of quiet and she's leaning on her arm on some kind of fence. But actually, what you can get from that is the fact that, you know, is there something on this girl's mind? What do you think? So you can allow the subjectivity when you're using photographs and case studies. And I think that is what can evoke all of that rich discussion and the connection then to the learning, to allow for that feedback and feed forward. Picture four, adorable. So we're talking about nature. Are we talking about being outside? Are we talking about physical and emotional, mental health, well-being? All of those things can come. And then also you could say, okay, so this was today, and then, you know, this was yesterday, and today this child is upset. What can you? There's so much you can get from these pictures. I love number six. And I think on photograph six, we were actually looking, and the young girl there in question maybe again may present with SEND. So this young girl may have Downs, I think. So what we're looking at here is again that sort of breaking those stereotypes. Look how happy this young girl is. Look how she's engaging with the environment. You've got the outdoors again. I love these pictures. I'm getting very excited. And I missed the photograph off the three. I'm not doing very well. I'm going in a linear fashion, see. But number three here, So again, we're looking at what's this young man doing? It looks like he's looking at a map, he's problem solving. Could we bring in questions around metacognition? Could we bring in questions around problem solving, around learning, literacy, treasure hunts, outdoor activities, anything? Again, on photograph 5, what's going on here, so you can allow that subjectivity to really run riot in the discussion points, and then tailor it and bring it back to some questions that you feel will help you with your formative. I think what these photographs will do is where they've been traditionally going away and researching, coming back and talking to you about something, not all students will find that easy, and I think all students will be able to contribute to something like this because it gives them a starting point. They're not going searching for it, and you can then tailor the learning to it. And have we got conflict in 7, or have we got empathy in 7? You can discuss and you can bring that out as well in your questions. Thanks, Helen. I've probably said too much, but I get quite
No, that's
excited. I love them.
absolutely brilliant. That's brilliant. No, I will quickly say that these are all copyright-free images that we have got from a website that is, as I say, it's free, copyright-free images. So please ensure if you use this kind of approach that you use copyright-free images. Rachel, I'm going to ask you very quickly if you could pop the website that we use into the chat for us, if that would be okay.
Yes, I will do.
You're a star, thank you. So these images are just as powerful as the ones that Janet's just been talking through, but what we thought for these was that students could be asked to create a case study on the children in these photographs, and bring in their industry experience, but also the core knowledge from the T level learning to creating something that would be it would be appropriate, it would be acceptable in the industry, that what the students would write about it. Janet, is anything in particular subject specific you could add there for me, please?
Well, again, I love what it's doing in terms of evoking that wider understanding and thinking subjectively, which we don't always do with students, to allow them to do that. And the fact that you're thinking about, what could have you could look at photograph 2 and 3, and you could almost make a comparison. I know we were talking about this, Helen, and is this the same child? What's gone on? What could have gone on? Let's explore some factors. So yeah, different lifestyles, all sorts that you can look at. So if you're thinking about factors that are impacting children, or you're raising issues that are, difficult to discuss and talk about, again, the power of image will evoke feeling and will bring out conversation in the least confident people.
Absolutely agree. Thank you, Janet. And then we've also brought in some images that would absolutely challenge stereotypes. So it's moving on, if you like, from the questions and the case studies, but also to bring in a review in a safe space of assumptions that we do make when we see an image. So I'm going to bring up these images and ask Janet to talk us through anyone in particular that you think's useful rather than them all.
Okay, well, yeah, that's not fair because I love them all. But
Go
what
on
I
and do
will
them all.
no, I'll take too long. We, look at photograph 1. I'll choose photograph 1, I think, because photograph 1 is really enabling us to think about child health. It's allowing us to think about educational needs of this child. How might those educational needs be interrupted? What sorts of services are available to support? What about the family? What about any siblings? What do you think the needs of this child are? So number 1 is really powerful, I think, and brings in that sort of the health side of things, and actually the holistic health and the education, and you can have some really good chats around that and discussions, but they're all fantastic. The power of photograph 2, the determination, the inclusion. They know nothing's going to stop that girl in photograph 2, and I love that. And you could talk about development. in photograph 3. What's this child doing? What about playing with natural products? Why don't we move to think about that? You know, all kinds of discussions. Literacy and the way we learn across the world, and the way people live. What about the challenges, and how we can compare our challenges in the UK with challenges overseas, and just bringing in, yet we're thinking about diversity, we're thinking about opportunity, but we're widening the way that we think, and that's really important for learning. Beautiful photographs.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you to do the same now for these different learning contexts that are represented by these images.
Okay, fantastic. I feel like I'm in a quiz. Okay, well, photograph 1, obviously you've got there that sort of very traditional classroom environment. It's almost like one I used to go to, but I've seen them. These corridors still exist, and what that learning environment might mean. So that might mean to me, okay, we're in a school, we're in a college. Oh, I thought, now I am in a quiz because you're making me remember what they were, aren't you?
Sorry, that was my fault.
In photograph 2, I'd be thinking probably of a university or a college, a very sort of elite place to study. So I'd be thinking about that. And for photograph 3, obviously we're in the early years here. We're indoors, and we've got some play activities going on and some collaboration. And 4, we've almost could compare with photo 1, where we're looking at a very modern building, and how might that make students feel? You know, what are our expectations, and think about the luxury of of access to some of this for some people. Especially when we've been thinking about learning across the world. When we think about the photograph in 5, yes, learning outdoors. You know, we can bring in Forest School, we can bring in Macmillan, we can bring in. There's so much we can bring in here. When we think about nature, outdoors, sustainability, development goals, all of those things can be in here, and we almost always forget about the creative arts. We could think we've got art in this one, we could just as easily have music, we could have dance. This is an absolute skill. It's a way of expressing oneself, and I think sometimes we forget just how powerful expressing it's only when you can't do it, when I would say I'm not very good at anyway, art and so on, that actually you appreciate that as a massive talent, don't you? And we don't put very much emphasis on that. We're very concerned with the other areas of learning and development, and curricular subject areas, and yet the arts allow us to find something holistic somehow. So underestimated, and a really good discussion point could be held around that and different pedagogies and philosophies.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Janet. It's great. I just quickly checked the question box as you were going there, and there's nothing come in yet, but please, we are reminding you that we'd like you to put things into that. So some well-chosen images can provide a wealth of formative assessment activities, which then can be adapted and used depending on the needs of the students and the topic. The next element we'd like to explore is based on reflection. And these 3 screenshots you can see are from forms students could be asked to complete based on the 3 different reflective models. They could complete each form based on the same experience, then review which was the most successful model and why. This will help to consolidate knowledge of the models and support the reflective practice further. I'll also include another reminder that if you've got any questions, please add them to the question box. And for a quick and easy starter activity or check of learning, word searches and crossword puzzles can be created very easily using Puzzle Maker. Here's a couple of examples. Created using the core content from the qualification spec. You could also ask your students to create puzzles for each other to complete, and this will allow more than one opportunity for you to assess the depth and breadth of their knowledge and understanding. And here are some quick examples of the question types you could use in a crossword puzzle. You could think about what aspects of the core you'd like to know more about exactly what your students know and focus your questions on those areas. For information, the answers to the questions here. For number 1, it's professional boundaries. For number 2, it's rudder. 3 is active experimentation. 4 is the Equality Act. And number 5, I'm going to hand over to Janet to answer. That put her on the spot, or she's lost
No,
audio again. Oh, there you are.
no, I was talking away, sorry. So what we're thinking about here is that sort of education healthcare plan. So that is where we are. So children and young people with SEND requiring specialist intervention and support may follow a health and education. That's not fitting, is it? Have I got the answer wrong?
No, you've got education, health, and it's just the word
And
"and" you'd missed.
I've missed the and. There we go. That would have been
Yeah.
embarrassing. Okay, so that's
No, but we
what.
had a lot of conversations about
We
that
did.
subject area, didn't we? Just because of writing that question. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another thing. You could use these. These are key words that are going into that crossword. So yes, you're having a little bit of formative. You're bringing a lesson to a close. Quick, reflection. But you are also opening up discussion points from some of these keywords, and
absolutely.
bringing in students' own experiences from their placement too, of course.
Yes, exactly. So we're aware that your organisations will probably ask you to predict student grades. So the first table here provides some guidance in relation to what an A and an E grade would look like. If you compare these two, the keywords for the A grade include consistently, comprehensive, critically analysed, substantiated judgments, relevant and accurate. And in comparison to this, for the E grade, the words include appropriate, some, basic, simple, limited and rudimentary. This reminds me of approach to grading used in HE, where the different grading bands demonstrate higher level thinking as they rise up the scale. However, in the live exams, assessments may vary slightly in levels of difficulty, and therefore, the mark that represented a C grade in the external examination in one assessment window may not be appropriate in the following assessment window. So to address this, raw marks are converted to uniform marks. The Uniform Mark Scale, or UMS, also allows NCFE to account for the relative weighting of the assessment to the qualification as a whole, the maximum UMS points available for each assessment, and the UMS points related to each grade boundary are fixed, and these are shown in the second table. And this information can be found in the qualification specification. So you could use this information to help you to predict grades for the core assessments. And please talk to us in curriculum consultations or in meetings if you think you would like to explore that a bit further. So some extra questions for considerations, please, and probably the most important one from a quality assurance Ofsted inspection perspective would be, how aware are your students of the results of the formative assessment activities they are completing? And we've added some of the areas which might be also to include useful and relevant to include here. But as this list is not exhaustive, it would need to be individualised for each student. So please also consider any other areas you think you might include for your students in the question box today. Janet, is there anything else you'd like to add here, please?
I think only to say that these questions on this slide, I think, really kind of loop everything that you've been saying and bring it right round and tie a nice bow around it, because it's all about encouraging and enabling students to learn. And to be able to do that, you do need to reflect, and whether it's incidental and you don't know you're doing it, or whether it's an intended activity, looking at what your development areas are can be difficult. So I think, allowing students to get to that point is a massive learning curve.
Absolutely, thank you. While I would just remind you that we'd still like questions from you. If you've got anything at all that you'd like to ask us, please do pop them into the question box. But we are nearing the end of today's session. We're at our second and final poll. What we'd like to do is find out the impact that today's session has had. Has it impacted on or improved your skills, knowledge, confidence, or provided reassurance and that what you're doing is already best practice? I'm going to launch the poll just now for you. So it'd be a case of telling us, has your knowledge, understanding and confidence level improved at all, or has it really not really changed and it's consolidated, and what you're doing is best practice, because sometimes that is learning in itself and it's very useful to get that reassurance. So we're just going to leave this poll open for a little while just to give everyone the opportunity to let us know how you feel about today's content. Has it impacted at all on your skills levels, confidence, etc.? It's wonderful. We're at 67%, oh, 75%, sorry, it's now jumped up. So thank you to those who have voted already. So we'll just leave it open a little while longer. Okay, I'm going to close it now and just share the results for you. And as you can see, we have got some people who've said it has improved, but a nice chunk of people have said it's not really changed, it's consolidated, and that's great. As I say, sometimes consolidation is just as important, and reassurance is just as important that what you're doing is good. So thanks for that. And please remember that attending a session is just the start of effective CPD. Please use what you've heard, learned or thought about today to evaluate your practice on a more of an ongoing basis. Try out new or different formative assessment activities, some that you maybe have just been introduced to today, or some of them you might have not used for a while. You've used them in the past, but you just forget about some of them, don't you, sometimes? So please try out some different assessment methods, but more importantly, evaluate their effectiveness as well. Okay, we've reached the end of today's session, so many thanks for attending. I'm just going to quickly ask Rachel if anything else or anything has come into the question box at all.
Hello. No, nothing new has come in, Helen.
Wonderful, that's great, thank you. If anybody thinks of any questions afterwards, you know how to contact us, please do so. And I'm going to remind you on that there'll be an evaluation form for you to complete as you go out. We really do rely on your feedback and ideas to inform and improve our CPD activities. Janet, is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish?
Just thank you to everybody who's come along and for their contributions in the chat. Really as interactive and engaging as we can make it under these circumstances. So thank you for that.
Yes, we're so looking forward to seeing people in the flesh again. It's just going to be so good. So thanks everybody. Take care. Goodbye. We do look forward to working with you more in the future in a collaborative way. So thanks ever so much. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you again. Thank you.